You're listening to the Underdog Podcast with Scott Kujak, episode 84.
I can't remember too much, but what I do remember is hearing a fiddle player play the Orange Blossom Special. And that just captivated me. And from that point on, I was determined to learn how to play, but only to play that one song. And, I'm just thinking about it now, a 4-year-old kid saying they want to do something, how many people are going to take that seriously? But, my parents did, and I started school that year at the Kentucky School for the Blind, and they had a music program, a strings program that taught Suzuki method violin.
This is the Underdog Podcast, and we bring you interviews from around the world of people including cancer survivors, war veterans, famous athletes, former drug addicts, entrepreneurs, amputees, and many more who became champions in the midst of life-altering adversity, providing you with an example on how to overcome your own challenges. This is your host, Scott Kujak, and I hope this episode ignites a fire inside of you to finish your underdog story. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited that you are joining me today on this Tuesday morning. I have a special guest. His name is Michael Cleveland. He is one of the best musicians that you will ever hear playing the fiddle. If you are a bluegrass fan, this is definitely a special treat for you. If you are not a bluegrass fan or just a music fan in general, definitely make sure you stick around and listen to his entire episode. He talks about all different types of genres of music, and he talks about his experience and his journey from picking up a fiddle for the first time at 4 years old and now becoming the 12-time Fiddler Player of the Year. He's already been inducted into the Hall of Fame. He is a remarkable man. After the interview, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and review. All of that helps. You can also look up scottkujak.com for all of the latest information on all of the underdogs that we interview here. And please leave a rating and review on Google. That is a huge search engine, as you guys all know and probably use, and it helps me a lot, not only with the podcast, but also with my speaking business and platform. I'm transitioning now into virtual speaking engagements, not just live on-stage performances due to COVID. So I would love for people to stumble across my platform looking for a speaker because of a rating and review that you left. Anyways, here is Michael Cleveland, the Flamekeeper. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Underdog Podcast. I am super excited to bring this interview today. On the line right now, we have Michael Cleveland. He is a world-famous musician. He is one of the best bluegrass fiddler instruments that you will ever hear or will ever see play live. So, Michael, welcome to the show. Can you share with us where you are logging in from?
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. And I'm from Charlestown, Indiana. So I'm here in my basement at my house here in Charlestown, and a lot of music happens here. So,
I
it's
bet.
great to be here.
For those who don't know, and I actually don't know myself, I'm familiar a little bit with the state of Indiana, but not where Charleston is. So where is that in?
Well, Charlestown and the general area that I grew up in is southern Indiana, so just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. So we're like maybe 15 minutes from downtown Louisville.
Gotcha.
So,
and we all know that Kentucky is the hub for bluegrass music here in the United States of America. And that's definitely where you have poured your talent and your energy and your passion into. So let's go ahead and just talk about how your music career started. Can you share with us who gave you your first violin? And at what age did you fall in love with bluegrass music?
Well, it's a funny thing, none of my family play, but my grandparents loved bluegrass music, and they wanted to start a place, an association for the pickers to be able to come and learn how to play. And what it was like an open stage thing. People would come sign up and, get like a 30-minute slot on stage. And, there'd be bands from all over Louisville, Kentucky, and then southern and even northern Indiana, who would come, and they would have like a stage show with bands coming on and off every 30 minutes, from like starting at 7 o'clock and going till like 11 at night. And I remember sometimes bands would show up and they wouldn't be able to get on. There were so many. And so even though they didn't play, they started taking me to those when I was about 6 months old. And so I was around it. I always liked it. But I guess when I was around 4 years old, which, most people can't remember anything about when they were 4 years old, and I can't remember too much, but what I do remember is hearing a fiddle player play the Orange Blossom Special. And that just captivated me. And from that point on, I was determined to learn how to play, but only to play that one song. And I'm just thinking about it now. A 4-year-old kid saying they want to do something. How many people are going to take that seriously? But my parents did, and I started school that year at the Kentucky School for the Blind, and they had a music program, a strings program that taught Suzuki method violin. And so I started there when I started school that year. And I remember the music teacher, I walked into the classroom and the music teacher said, "Oh, you want to play the violin? What is it that you like so well about the violin?" I said, "Well, I don't know much about the violin, but I know a lot about the fiddle." And she said, "Oh, really? What about it?" And I said, "Well, I want to learn how to play bluegrass, and I want to learn how to play the Orange Blossom Special." And she said, "Well, that'll be a while." And it was, But that's kind of how I got started. And to tell you the truth, it seemed like somebody had given me a fiddle, but it was too big for me. See, when you start, especially when you're little like that, the thing is, like a standard size violin probably isn't going to work. So what you do, if you have a music teacher or something like that, they'll measure your arm, the length of your arm, and it's got to be able to come out reach to the end of the scroll, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And so so we ended up renting one. I think I started on probably the smallest size. Seems like it was a 16th or something like that. It was tiny. And they had to order one, and I ended up renting. I think my parents rented me my first three or four sizes just to see if I was going to really stick with it, because it took a while. I mean, to even get started, like probably a year or more before I could play anything. And like they kind of thought for a while that I wouldn't, probably be able to play, just because I was not making that much progress at first. And then, once I got, to where I was starting to figure it out, it came a little easier, but still, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what, even if you have talent or, aptitude for something, you're still going to work at it and, continue working at it all your life. There's always going to be stuff that you can do better, and improve on. But
exactly,
it's like anything, it's a slow process.
And so that's a perfect segue to my next question, which is, Music is really, really tough, especially trying to learn it and pick it up at 4, 5, 6 years old. I played a couple instruments growing up, and I stopped, I think, at the end of middle school or early high school. And it was really difficult for me just to like get the knack for it and learn how to play the different notes, the different keys, and on all the different things. But in addition to just the normal rigors that come with learning an instrument, you mentioned that you are blind and you went to the Kentucky School for the Blind. So not only is music tough, but you have the extra element of having to learn strictly through touch, strictly through hearing, and not being able to see the actual chords that you were um, touching and the string that you were using across the fiddle. So what was your inspiration, or who was your inspiration to stick with this even during the most difficult, challenging days?
Well, I need to say, first of all, I don't remember any. Well, here's the thing. Once I got into bluegrass, and once I heard, that sound, and the fiddle or whatever, I mean, I was in. I wanted to do it. And not only did I want to do it, but it was all I thought about. It was not like, and I consider myself very fortunate that my parents or none of my family ever really pushed me. And I see so many kids out here today, who are talented, but the parents, can't. The the parents just take over and they go nuts every time the kid shows a little bit of talent, and they start shoving the kid on stage, or you're going to practice 3 or 4 hours a day, and then the kid doesn't have a chance to be a kid. And I was very fortunate that I was not one of those. I had the option of, I never did feel like I absolutely had to do it, and I'm very grateful for that. And also, I mean, I didn't look at it, I mean, when you put it like that, it's like music is difficult and this and that, and I didn't think of it. I mean, I knew it was difficult, and I knew, I knew it was gonna take a while, but it was like I was obsessed with it, I guess you could say. So there was no other alternative. And as far as being blind, I mean, that was just one more thing, thanks to my parents, and thanks for, to going to the school for the blind, and being around kids who were visually impaired. It was never presented to me like, oh man, here's this, difficult thing, you're blind, and you've got to overcome this, and you've got to, and, bless your heart and all that. I was never, uh, I got to be around, other kids my age, and, like when you go to school for the blind, uh, it's really good because you're around, you're nothing special because you're blind. You're around a ton of kids who are visually impaired, and teachers who are visually impaired and successfully doing it, living their lives, living independently, so you got all these people who have done it, it's not like, and I know kids go to, there, you can go to a public school, you have the option. So like the Kentucky School for the Blind encompasses like the whole state of Kentucky. So you could live way down in eastern Kentucky or something like that, and you would still go, if you chose to, you could go to the School for the Blind, which is in Louisville, which is about 3.5, 4 hours away, which means, you would stay in the dorm during the week and go home on the weekends. But, I know a lot of parents choose to, keep their kids closer to home, which is understandable. And so, they also get put in public school, which, I don't think would be that easy. If I was 4 years old and blind and, just started school with a bunch of kids who weren't blind, and a bunch of, nothing to relate to, I think that would have made it a lot more difficult for me. But I just want to say, I didn't, I was not ever presented with it like, here's this huge thing you have to overcome, and it's the end of the world. So, but
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great response, and I didn't even think about that. But yeah, your world would have been completely different if you had gone to a public school in Southern Indiana versus going to a school with other people who had, the similar background and similar life story as you. Hopefully, you met a lot of buddies there in Kentucky who were just as passionate for music as you were, because clearly you had this deep and profound love for bluegrass and wanting to learn it. And when the days became tough and challenging, your love just completely overtook any doubt or trouble or pain that the music career could have brought to you. One of the next questions I want to ask is, you became really successful in this, definitely into adulthood, but you became a rising star as a teenager, and you got to play in some really big key name events with some really cool players, like at the Grand Ole Opry or in front of the United States Congress. Can you share with us what your favorite memory was from childhood, or where your favorite venue was to play?
Oh man, well, that definitely the Grand Ole Opry, and the thing that was, led up to that, I should say. Um, there's a guy who used to play banjo in a group called Hot Rise, who was the president of IBMA, the International Bluegrass Music Association at the time. And he had there was an article in the Washington Post that, somebody was talking about bluegrass, and that, bluegrass was kind of dying off, and there weren't very many young people, kids taking an interest in the music anymore. And I'll have to say, when I was learning and, you know, learning how to play in this area, and, going to the bluegrass shows that my grandparents had and some others in the area, there weren't a lot of kids at all. I was around, from the time I was probably 7, 8 years old, I was around people a lot older than I was. And it wasn't until later on that I met anybody that was close to my age that was playing. But so, yeah, they wrote this article saying that bluegrass was dying, and this banjo player, Pete Warnick, decided to challenge that by putting a band of kids together to play on the IBMA awards show. And I was picked as, the fiddle player for the band. And then the other kids were Chris Steele, who now hosts the Live From Here that used to be Prairie Home Companion, with Garrison Keeler. He's the host of that now. He's had the band the Punch Brothers for years, and Nickel Creek before that, very successful. And Cody Kilby, who plays guitar now with Traveling McCurries, and Josh Williams, and my friend Brady Stockdale, who played the bass. So we were invited to play on the awards show, and that in itself was, I've been to bluegrass festivals, but imagine, well, to just put it in the best way possible, imagine, being, 12 or 13 years old, and you could go to, I guess you could say, the ultimate bluegrass festival. This convention happens, for an entire week, and I think I was there maybe 2 days of it.
This is
But
kind of like the Super Bowl, huh?
this is the thing that everybody goes to. Anybody I ever heard on record, anybody, who was still out playing, they were there. And, you could meet all of them and jam with olive. You know, I mean, it was like it was like a dream come true for me. And so I did that, and that kind of led to meeting Alison Krauss, and then Alison a little later on asked me to be a guest of theirs on the Opry, and that was great experience also. It's totally unforgettable. But
And
just to
how old were
be,
you at that time?
I was 13.
Wow, that's crazy. What a cool just like memory that you have at 13 years old. Think of what the majority of 13-year-olds are doing across the United States right now, is like getting into trouble in middle school or chasing girls or trying to struggle and finish their
Sorry, this
homework.
other phone's ringing.
Oh, it's okay. And you got a chance to play at the Grand Ole Opry. That's amazing. So now
Yeah,
I
I mean, I kind of had, I mean, I did all the other things too. I mean, I was in trouble. I can tell you that for a little. I mean, not serious trouble, but I mean,
normal
how
shenanigans.
12, 13-year-old kids are.
Exactly.
So.
Well, let's pivot now. We can talk a little bit about your career as an adult. Right now, you are part of the band Michael Cleveland and Flamekeeper, and you guys have won many, many awards, and we'll talk about those awards here in a little bit, both as a group and as an individualist. However, could you share with us how you met the people in your band and how long you guys have been touring together?
Well, it's a funny thing, the guitar player Josh Richards and the mandolin player Nathan Livers, we kind of all three grew up playing together long before I even thought about having a band that toured professionally or whatever. So I met Nathan when I was about 12 years old. As a matter of fact, he was the first person that was about close to my age that lived in my area that I played with. And Josh, he's a little younger, but I remember him, starting out, and his dad's a musician. He used to come to all the bluegrass things. And so, I mean, here are these guys that I kind of grew up around and playing with just locally. And, I would have never thought in a million years, here it would come back around. See, when Flamekeeper started, I never really thought of myself as a band leader. I still don't. I mean, it's a little bit more natural to me now. But it's not like I set out to start my own band. It just happened that the band I was working for at the time didn't have a lot of dates, and so I wanted to work, and I had made some solo albums for Rounder Records, and I had some people on these albums. They were kind of pretty well known names in bluegrass. So basically, what we talked about was, hey, why don't we try and put together a configuration of this band that played on my records, and make it a special kind of all-star thing that happens every once in a while. Just book a handful of dates, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I met our booking agent Jim Rowe, and he heard us play, and he's like, "This is what you need to be doing right here." And so it wasn't the exact configuration that was on the albums, but it was pretty close. And so all of a sudden, here I was, a band leader, and I never really intended on doing that. I'm glad I did, but so that's I kind of forget where I was going with that, but that's kind of how the band got started. And oh yeah, so Josh and Nathan, I mean, here, I had this band, and the band for years had, kind of named players that had a reputation in bluegrass, players that people knew, or were kind of well regarded in the music, and like we were scattered all over the place. I mean, at one point I had a guitar player from Pennsylvania. I had a mandolin player that lived in Maine part of the time. I had a bass player that lived in Virginia, and a banjo player from Kentucky.
Oh, that's a
And
lot to manage right there.
oh yeah, well, and now, the way it's worked out, here I am playing music with not only good musicians, but, Josh and Nathan, I mean, we've known each other for years, even way before I started this band. And it's almost like a full circle kind of thing,
How did y'all settle on the name Flamekeeper?
Well, that was the name of the first solo album that I did for Rounder Records. And that was 2002. And I don't know, like the president of the record label at the time, Ken Irwin, he suggested that name, and I didn't like it at first, and I don't even know why now I didn't like it. But it was a good album title, and I thought, well, it'd be a good band name,
Yeah,
But
that's cool.
basically, it means playing traditional bluegrass, keeping the tradition alive while still adding your own new elements to the music as well.
That's neat that it stemmed from your original record as an individual, and now you're carrying it with a coherent group of some of your best friends, and you guys have the formation of this band has paid many dividends for you over the years. Let's just leave it at that, because the awards you guys have won is just off the charts. I want to ask you specifically with this band, what is your favorite record and why?
Well, I mean, I'm really happy with this current album, and the reason why, I'm happy with all the records, but this current album, it gives the guys in the band that I tour with, you can definitely hear what that sounds like. And also, not only me, but the guys in the band on this album get to collaborate with some special guests and professionals in the music. So that it was really a cool thing for me to bring them together. Not only doing collaborations with me, and people that I've played with or whatever, to have the guys in the band like Josh, our guitar player, get to sing a duet with Del McCurry, or to get to record as a band with the great guitarist Tommy Emmanuel, I mean, things like that, is kind of a dream come true for me.
I bet. And you get to live that dream every single day. I'm excited to hear that this current album. I'll have to check it out. So I want to read off a list of achievements that you have. And at the end of it, I want you to tell me the one that's most important to you, or the one that you cherish the most, or if there's another award that's not even on this list, share that one too. So 12-time Fiddler Player of the Year, 6-time Instrumental Group of the Year. You have a Grammy Award, and you're in the National Fiddler Hall of Fame. Which one's your favorite?
Well, it's kind of hard to pick a favorite, It really is. I mean, we're honestly really excited about this Grammy Award, and all the IBMA awards and nominations. The thing is, to be nominated for something like that, even if you don't win, you're talking about, narrowing it down to you and say 4 other people or 4 other albums, or and you're in the pretty much on the list of some of the top players. Even if you don't win, if you're voted on by your peers, people that you look up to, and you even make it in the nominations or whatever. I mean, that's a huge honor, and I don't take that lightly. So it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick a favorite. I'll just say that I've been very fortunate.
You're a humble man, Michael. We can all appreciate that. How else are you trying to impact the world beyond your music?
Well, I mean, music is my life. It's what I do, even when we're not on the road, or during the COVID-19, we're not playing on the road at all. Pretty much our dates have been canceled for the rest of the year. Which we want to play, but we want to be safe also. So I guess that's the thing to do. But even so, I record for people all over the world just from here in my basement. I got a recording set up here, and people send me things to play on, and I play a fiddle or a mandolin part or whatever they need, and send it back, and get to make music, I guess you could say, virtually, like with people that I've never even met. They'll just reach out online, or whatever, and they send you a file on Dropbox, and you import it into your studio program and play on it, and then send your file back, and somehow it all ends up lining up right. It's crazy. But I think what I'm trying to do, and I think I can speak for the guys in my band, is we want to play all kinds of festivals or shows or clubs, and not just bluegrass festivals. We like playing bluegrass festivals, but we've gotten to do some things that have shown me, anyway, that bluegrass music, although people are aware of it, might not be the kind of thing that people truly appreciate or truly know what the capabilities are. Like, and I've done the same thing. It's really easy to listen to a type of music. You hear one artist or one band, and you say, I don't like that, or that's not my thing. But whether it's bluegrass or rock or country or whatever, there's all kinds of bands, artists, sounds, that are within the genre. It's still country, or it's still bluegrass music. If I were to play you a Bill Monroe record, with his high, kind of nasally sounding singing, and then I can turn around and play you an Alison Krauss record, and it's still bluegrass, but it's two different things. And so basically, what I've found is when we get to perform for people who aren't aware, or like haven't really heard that much bluegrass, it's such a cool thing. We like playing for bluegrass fans, obviously, but we got to play a couple of concerts a few years ago with the Louisville Orchestra, where they put arrangements to some of our songs that we've recorded. And I mean, we played at the Kentucky Center for the Arts here in Louisville, and Whitney Hall, which holds about 2,400 people. And you know, there were bluegrass fans there, but I guarantee you there were a lot of people who just had the vaguest idea of what bluegrass was. And that it just went over extremely well. And then we played on a couple of rock festivals and jam band festivals and performing arts centers and things like that. So we're trying to not only play bluegrass festivals, but we want to play for, you know, we want to play for other types of events also. And what we're working for. And what I'm working for is to collaborate with as many different people. You know, like I've always heard people say, you know, don't put yourself in a box, which I kind of have done for a while, you know, like, and I'm not ashamed of that. But, you know, for years, you know, with this band being primarily a traditional bluegrass band, you know, they you know, kind of think of me as a traditional bluegrass fiddle player, which I am. You know, I love to play traditional bluegrass, but you know, I can play other stuff, and so can the guys in the band. You know, I mean, the sessions I get here, I play on, you know, pop records, country, you know, Americana, jazz, you know, some blues sounded thing. You know, it just uh, you know, we want to keep playing bluegrass. We're definitely going to keep playing bluegrass, but you know, we want to play other things also.
A true musician, appreciation for music across the spectrum. I'm so glad that even though the world has stopped, the music hasn't stopped, and you're still producing records for yourself, for your band, and for other people, and getting your talent and getting your sound out there. I know that I looked at your touring schedule coming up in 2020, and you know, who knows if all this will get mixed up or not, but I live in Texas, and the good thing is that we have a saying here that if you're gonna play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. So
Yeah.
I look forward to you coming down here, and although you're playing in, I think I saw McKinney, which is about 3.5 hours from where I live, but I would love to
Yeah.
try to swing by and see it, and see your collaboration with the Flamekeeper band, and see how you bring your bluegrass background, but also I know you also bring different touches and aspects of different types of music, like rock, like Americana, and bring it into your performance. One of
Yeah.
the last questions I have for you, Michael, which may be the most important question of this entire interview, is you have found so much success throughout life in the music industry and in other areas. Being a blind man in modern day America, someone who's listening right now, or a parent that's listening right now, and their child is either blind or deaf or has an impairment of some sort, what would you say to them to encourage them in their hopes and aspirations, whether that's in music or a completely different industry?
Well, you know, if you're dealing with, you know, I can't imagine what it was like for my mom and dad. You know, it's like, you know, okay, your son's blind. You know, it's got all these, you know, other things going on, but um, the good thing now that wasn't as much the case 30, 39, close to 40 years ago now. It's like, you know, there are so many resources that are available. You know, you can go online and you can, you know, you can, you know, search for, you know, the American Council for the Blind, you know, the National Federation of the Blind, and you know, like there are resources and people, you know, who not only deal with this kind of thing, but you know, you're probably, chances are you're going to talk to somebody who's, you know, visually impaired and, you know, has dealt with all that. You know, so I would encourage, you know, if you know, have kids, you know, that's visually impaired or deaf or whatever, you know, seek out all the resources available And, because it can be a scary thing, and it can seem like you're alone in all of it. But man, there's so many people and things available to you now that it seems like it would be, better now than it ever has been. My main thing, if a kid wants to play, or or if you have a child with musical ability, I definitely recommend exploring that, getting them some lessons if they show interest, but man, for God's sake, stay out of their way. Because, and what I mean by that is, don't make it a chore. And, if I was told, and now I know this isn't the same for everybody, and I know people who say, well, if my dad hadn't pushed me to play, then I wouldn't be playing today. But, if I thought that I had to play 3-4 hours a day, or I was going to get in trouble or whatever, that wouldn't have done it for me, And like, you're a kid, you get interested in different things. You start playing, and maybe you take a break from playing music for a while and you're into this other thing. If it's really there and you really like it, and it's not the kind of thing where you're forced to do it, you're going to come back to it. You can't, if it's something you're passionate about, you're going to, you may take a break from it, or not do it for a while, but you're going to come back. And, I think it's a fine line, between facilitating all that and, all of a sudden the kid doesn't have a life anymore other than playing music and being shoved on stage with whoever you think they should play with. That's not good. And I've seen that more than I've seen parents who actually, well, I mean, there's a different, you encourage, you want to encourage your kids, and you want them to do well, but at the same time, make it about them.
Great advice. So, two things. You're not alone. There are plenty of resources out there. So make sure you guys are doing your research and getting plugged in with people who can help. And number two is, do not push your kid beyond their limits, and still let them be kids and go out and have fun. Great advice, Michael. Speaking from firsthand experience, and obviously he is a very successful man today, and has a huge impact on the culture, especially in the bluegrass states. Michael, we will pivot now and we'll move to the last three questions I ask every single guest on the show. Excited to hear what you have to say. Number one is, what is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote. Let me see. I don't know. Briscoe Darling said on the Andy Griffith Show, if you got time to breathe, you got time for music. I like that one pretty well.
I have never heard that before, but it's fitting for you being a musician for sure. Number two is, how has being an underdog in your story shaped you into the person that you are today?
Well, I'll have to say again, I never really thought of myself as an underdog, but I do know what it means to not, like, even when I was playing when I was a kid, and I got to play the Opry once and do this, thing for the International Bluegrass Music Association I was telling you about, and then we played for Congress and all these things. But I was still in school at the time. I was in high school, and there were kids my age who they were homeschooled. Their parents decided, all right, they're going to make the big time, so we're putting them homeschool, and they've got a record contract. And so that all seemed pretty far away to me. So I do know, I do kind of know that feeling, you know, and even the people at my school, you know, they were saying you better have something else to fall back on, because there's a ton of musicians out here, you know, and we're all trying to do the same thing. So I do know the feeling of that as well. So it was, you know, to have been fortunate enough and still be fortunate enough to be out here playing. I'm very grateful for that.
Great perspective. Yeah, you definitely juggled and balanced a lot growing up. Thankfully, you were one of the musicians that did make it, because I do know that a lot of musicians struggle to make it, and they really have a brand and a national or statewide awareness of their talents and their performance. So, great response. Number 3 is, how do you define success, and why do you consider yourself successful?
Well, I think if you continue to set goals for yourself and you do the work to achieve your goals, that, and you know, you continually push yourself and, you know, explore new things and figure out how to make, you know, what you have to offer even better. You know, I think that's success. You know, there's no real point where you're like, all right, I made it. You know, I've done everything that, you know, I want to do or need to do. You know, when you get to that point, it's time to figure out something else.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those responses, Michael. How can people connect with you or keep up to date on what you and the Flamekeeper are doing together and traveling? Any new music releases? Where is the best site or social media profile to get all this information?
Our website is flamekeeperband.com, and definitely check that out. And also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/MC Flamekeeper.
Gotcha. Sweet. Well, I'll have that in the show notes. Everybody, I encourage you, even if you're not a bluegrass fan, as Michael alluded to before, there are different styles of bluegrass and different things that he weaves in and out of his music that brings in different elements of rock and the blues and Americana that I encourage you to go check out. But if you could just YouTube a video of him playing the fiddle, he literally sets the fiddle on fire. That thing is smoking when he's done playing because of how fast he plays and how harmonious it is with everything. Like, he is an excellent fiddler, and that's why he's been the Fiddler Player of the Year 12 times. So go check him out. Check out the band as well. If he's touring somewhere near you, I encourage you to go listen to him in person. I'm sure it will be a treat. Michael, thank you for joining us from Indiana. I know that you are a busy man, but I do appreciate you coming on Underdog.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, episode 84 is coming to a wrap. Thank you, Michael, for joining the show, and thank you for sticking around. Please check out scottkujak.com for more information on Michael and anybody else that you want to hear on the Underdog Podcast over the last couple of years. Coming up next features a story of a man who immigrated here from Poland and has broken Guinness World Records for weightlifting, for powerlifting. He is a remarkable human being and has a huge knowledge and wisdom and experience of different things he's learned over the years through weightlifting, but also from the different clients that he's had a chance to work with, many of them involving Hollywood celebrities. You don't want to miss it. That is coming up next week. Actually, that will be coming up in 2 weeks. I apologize, I forgot. This Friday, I will be having my wedding, or second wedding, you can say. My wife and I, we got married in late March because our wedding was scheduled in the middle of April and it got postponed and canceled because of coronavirus. Thankfully, our venue and all of our vendors agreed to meet our new date, which is June 26th, and we will be getting married and then heading on a quick trip, so we will not have an episode next week. If you want to wish us well or reach out to us and see how the wedding goes, you can definitely follow me on social media at ScottKujak10 to see any photos. But then if you want to see any more photos or video content of our guests, you can follow at underdog_podcast on Facebook and Instagram. So this is from Underdog. We're signing off for a couple of weeks, and we hope to see you at the beginning of July. Take care.